So I've been reading this book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sagyal Rinpoche. And there's some very interesting ideas in this book. In particular, there's one idea I want to discuss here. And it's really something that has had a profound impact on me and might have changed the way I think about dying. Before I get to that, a couple of words about this book. This is not the same as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is perhaps the most famous Tibetan book ever written about, it literally is a guide to dying. It offers ways in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition to prepare one for dying, but it's seen as being rather difficult for Westerners to understand and not so accessible for new readers to this discipline. This book by Sagyal Rinpoche, who is himself friends with the Dalai Lama and a very experienced Lama who's dedicated his life to meditation and things like that. This book is this book was written with the specific intent of translating that book to a Western audience, and so, and also expanding upon what it means to live a good life. It's now the book of living and dying. Anyway, that's the context of this book here, which I am about halfway through at the moment. So, I am by no means an expert on Tibetan Buddhism or anything like that. I'm just a guy who found a book with an interesting idea that I'd like to share. So, the idea is this. When someone is dying, in their last moments, it's often, imagine if you have a grandparent, for example, who has been hospitalized for a long time. You often know beforehand that their death is imminent. Not always. There are tragedies, of course. Car accidents and stuff like that happen every single day. Death can sometimes be rather unexpected. But in a lot of situations, it can be expected. Not the day that it occurs, but you can have a feeling of, well, maybe Grandma only has one or 2 years left. And Grandma herself will also, no doubt, have that feeling. Her lived experience, if she's willing to reflect upon it, her own body will tell her the end is coming. And so, according to this Tibetan belief system, it is the moment of death that is the most important moment of your entire life. In fact, your entire life is kind of training for that moment of death. Because it's your consciousness in your moment of death that determines how you will be reborn. Of course, Buddhists believe in the cycle of reincarnation. We've all been reborn many times before. And the goal is actually to break this cycle. We exist in samsara. We exist in this world of forms, which, while it can be beautiful, look in front of me. There's no doubt beauty to this world of forms, but there's also suffering. We must acknowledge that every single beautiful leaf on that tree will soon fall and die. Every blade of grass will eventually die. The little fly that just landed on my hand a moment ago will die. And I will die as well. And so will you. And so will every single person listening to this video. This is the suffering aspect of what is called samsara, which is this existence that we live in. And the idea is that it is actually possible to escape this cycle, to reach enlightenment, if you will, and then you will escape this samsara realm and you will enter into nirvana, Nirvana literally means, I guess it could be seen as heaven, could be a synonym by some belief systems, but you got to be careful, because heaven is not, somewhere in the clouds or somewhere where all your friends are or anything like that. I mean, it's you've escaped this world. You've escaped this. You're leaving all this behind. And so that is the goal, and it is your state of consciousness in the moment of death that determines if you are ready for nirvana, which very few of us are. I mean, most of us are just on a journey of many, 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 many rebirths. And so we are doing our best to be reborn in the best way possible, or at least, best is actually maybe not the right word to use, because, a more complete understanding of the concept would say that, well, there's no best or worst. You're just getting the life that you need because you have some, you have some karma to work through. You have some issues that you need to address. And if you don't address them in this lifetime, if you die with your, main issues still attached to you, spoiler alert, you're just going to get the same things to work on in the next lifetime. And if you did a particularly, poor job of addressing those issues, you may actually be punished, in a sense, by having a worse life next time. Maybe you're a human, maybe you come back as a human with a particularly difficult life, a particularly brutal existence. Or maybe you're not a human at all, maybe you come back as a squirrel or a fly, or, and then you're really in trouble because you don't have as much awareness and consciousness of what's going on. And so it's harder for you to work on what you got to go through, and then you're just kind of stuck. And so the fact that you're here as a human and you have the time to watch a video like this, I mean, it would suggest that you actually are quite fortunate. But anyway, the main idea, which has stuck with me so much, is that idea that it's the moment of dying which determines your future life, your future rebirth. And so the funny thing about this is, there are a lot of monks who, literally dedicate their whole lives to meditation, right? And to the point at which they only eat bowls of rice. They swear off having families. They swear off material possessions. They live in monasteries, and they essentially meditate all the time. And even someone like that, let's say you dedicated the last 50 years to meditation, and then in the moment of death, right when you're thinking, okay, I'm at peace, I'm ready to be reborn, and then some fly lands on your forehead, and your last thought, your last moment of consciousness is, oh my god, that stupid fly, get off my forehead. You're gonna have a bad next life, because you were not able to escape the distraction and the anger and the annoyance at that fly. And so what does this all mean, right? Why am I saying all this? Why does this idea stick with me? Most of us watching this video, all of us perhaps, are not monks. We are not people who have dedicated our lives to meditation. So how can we take this little idea, first expressed to me in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and how can we apply this to our own lives? Well, to me, even though it can be sort of a scary thought, it's scary for that monk who meditates their whole life, and then it turns out to all be for nothing. But at the same time, it can be very liberating, because if you remember that it's not so much your life that matters, but your death, the last moment of your life, then whatever problems you have dealt with aren't so important, are they? I like the idea that life is just training for the moment of death. And if I do die, and if I'm fortunate enough to have awareness in that moment of death, not to be randomly struck down by lightning or something, but to have a slower death, then I will be grateful for that, because I will see it as a chance to really make peace. And so one of the beautiful things about this way of thinking is that if someone does develop cancer or something like that, which we would usually think of as being a great pain and burden on that person and their family, and it is, right? I'm not discounting any of the enormous suffering that causes. The only silver lining is it gives that individual more time to really accept their death, come to peace with their death, and in so doing make this whole journey of suffering somehow worth it, somehow meaningful in the end. And so I think that this way of thinking is powerful enough to give life meaning, in fact. More powerful, in fact, than the idea of we're living just to make money. We're living just to, have something to give to our kids, some legacy to leave behind, or sometimes people just want to live as long as possible. A lot of people spend every moment of their life living healthy. I'm not saying it's wrong to live healthy. I'm just saying, you ever met someone who's so afraid of dying that they're not really living? They're just kind of, they're afraid to leave the house because, someone got mugged the other day and now I can't leave the house. That way of thinking is it just seems rather childish to me compared to the idea that we must accept the death that is coming for us all, and in so doing prepare for it, because it's that moment that matters, and that moment, in fact, which gives meaning to life. I'll put a link to this book in the description if anyone wants to learn more. Once again, I am not a expert at Tibetan Buddhism or anything like that, but I find it to be a very nice way of looking at the world and looking at this existence that we're all living in. And I hope you've enjoyed this brief reflection on life and death in today's video. Hope you all have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time.